Hi, Thomas.
Yeah, nice.
Hi, how are you? I think we can
Good.
just get started. It's 10:01.
Okay, good morning.
First of all, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. And again, welcome to the third installment in our webinar series. Are you guys able to see my screen?
No, I don't think you're sharing.
Okay. All right, terrific. Are you able to see it now?
Yep.
Terrific. So again, welcome again to the third installment in our webinar series. Today's topic is how to use Daloopa to update your existing models in seconds. Now, during this call, we'll show you how you can leverage our Smart Excel plugin to update all your models during earnings, especially now, down to the smallest adjustment in KPI disclosure. Now, as a reminder, we want to make sure that this session is interactive as possible. So if you have any questions at all, please make sure that you use the chat function. And Thomas and I will be more than happy to answer any of your questions. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to Thomas. We'll take it from here.
Thank you, Anas. Hi, everyone. So today's session is going to be a little bit quicker. The functionality is powerful, but it's very simple to use. So we're going to talk about how to use a plugin to update your models in seconds. So without further ado, I will share my screen and I will start walking you guys through this. Anas, you gotta stop sharing.
I'll stop sharing my screen. All yours.
Okay, so on my screen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out an old model. So this is not a Daloopa model. This is just what you would typically see in your course of work, right? So what I have in front of me is a Salesforce model. It's a little bit old. But all the data in here, all the KPIs have been hard-coded. There is no link from Daloopa, and the forward estimates are right here, right? So this is just a typical model, and your objective is you want to update your model, right? Even though Daloopa has a lot of the data, you don't want to rebuild your Salesforce model in our template. You want to keep it updated. Last week, we went through how the Retrofitter works. So just a quick rehash. On how to first retrofit your model before you update, and we'll get into the nuances of updating. So let me just jump right in here. Right, I will. If you guys have any questions around the retrofitter, you can always refer to the webinar last week, or you can go to our documentation at docs.daloopa.com. So I'll just very quickly come in and I will fill up the retrofitter to get my data updated to 2022 too. And I want column R to be retrofitted with, to be used as a check for 2020 Q1. And this looks correct. So I'm going to do that. Right. So what the retrofitter is doing, right, if you recall from the last session, is it's adding in Daloopa hyperlinks into your existing data. No other modification. We keep your numbers the same. We keep your format the same. We're just adding in a hyperlink so you can click on it to view the source. And what the updater is going to do is it's going to update your new version. But before I run the updater, I want to talk about how I've set some of these things up. One of the things that a lot of our customers care about is to understand how their estimates have changed with updated data. Right. So in this case, what you want to do is you want to have your estimate on one side and you want to have updated data on the other side. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy and paste values into this estimates column that I created at the side. So this creates a track for me of what my previous estimates were. Because once we update, what is going to happen is your estimated number, right? In this case, the 1320, the 1368, these numbers will get replaced by actual data. And so for now, I will then have update equals to this column. I'm going to copy. And as before, I'm just going to paste. Right. So what is the difference? The difference is this is a hard-coded number and this is a reference. Formats, right? And the updater is going to do one simple thing. You're going to tell it the column you want to update it for, in this case, column T, and you're going to tell it the calendar quarter that you want to update data in. And once you hit update, what you will notice, to Typically takes around 10 seconds. There we go. Right, so what you notice is that we have replaced your old estimate data with the new data. And in this side, you see that the hard-coded number obviously stays hard-coded, and now you can do a comparison between what the new data is versus what your estimates were, right? And you can do a variance analysis on your own, and that's how we see a lot of people do it. Now, how does the updater actually work? Let's walk through this in a little bit more detail. Essentially, what the updater is saying is it's only updating rows where it has identified data from Daloopa. And the way we identify data from Daloopa is these hyperlinks, which is why you need to run the retrofitter in the first place. The beauty of this method is with the hyperlinks inside, we ignore your calculations because these calculations are yours. They are not extracted from the company's financials. In other words, your estimates will be kept intact. So you will have to do a control right, to get the estimates to flow. Oh, and we will skip across any number that you might have typed in here as part of your notes. So let's say you have a note that types in here because on one of the IR calls, you learned that America's split for Salesforce is perhaps 90% US and 10% Canada. And you have a little note here. This note will not be replaced because this was not data originally from Daloopa, right? We only replace data where we find in a previous column, it doesn't have to be the preceding column, but any of the previous columns, a data point that was from Daloopa. So that's the first thing. The second thing is some clients have asked us, well, the retrofitted one column of data for me. What if I want a previous column of data to include data as well? So to include the hyperlinks as well. For instance, let's say one day you're looking at this and you say, hey, I wonder what 2019 revenues by Americas was, right? You have this data point, but you're wondering, I need to know where this number was from. Well, there's two methods to get this. The first method is you can run the retrofitter again to manually, to automatically insert the links, or you can use the update function to update it once the retrofitter is done, right? In this case, I can say in Excel column N, I would like the data from 2019 Q2. And if you hit update, what's going to happen is we're going to update it, in this case, by looking at one of these hyperlinks and creating the update for this column. So once you have the retrofitter done once, you don't have to use the retrofitter again. You can simply use the updater. It will make no difference if you use the retrofitter or the updater, but this will work. And in this case, you can now click into this 2816, and we can bring you to the source of where the 2816 is. So this fundamentally is how the updater works. Now, how have we seen people use the updater in real life? Well, there are a couple of different ways we've seen it. So the first way we've seen it work is through what we call an industry model. On my screen right here is an industry model that has been pre-built, right? What this is all the semiconductors on one sheet. Now, I just want to caveat that an industry model is not a comp sheet. What you are trying to achieve in a comp sheet is you want to look at valuations, previous quarter year-on-year growth, and other types of, a lot of times, valuation-driven metrics across the space. An industry model is meant to track trends. It's an idea generation process. So the question you can ask an industry model will be something like, is some company growing much faster than the others? Or is some company buckling the industry trend, right? Where everyone's gross margins are increasing, but yours is decreasing. So an industry model tracks time series, whereas comp sheets generally track data as a point in time. So a lot of your sell-side research produces comp sheets, but rarely do they create industry models. And what we want to do is we want to empower you to have industry models. So if you look here, what we've done is we've just simply copied and pasted the data for about a dozen or so semiconductor companies. And the idea here is very simple. What you're trying to understand is you're trying to understand if there is some significant outlier in terms of what is going on. right? I'm building these charts and I'm trying to see what is going on in terms of inventories versus finished goods as a percent of inventory. Because the argument you could make in this case is if a company is building a lot of inventory and finished goods as a percent of inventory is coming down, that means you're just going to sell a lot of stuff, right? Because you're pulling down all your finished goods, even though your inventory levels are rising. But what's perhaps more interesting is not to look at it from a single company perspective, but to look at it versus the rest of the industry. In other words, if every company has total inventories growing and finished goods as a percent of inventory declining, and there is a particular company that's doing the opposite, that's something that you would like to know, right? Because everyone is seeing, record demand, and perhaps one player is not. So that's something that could be potentially interesting, right? Something that you will want to track. The problem with these industry models is building it is quick, but updating it is incredibly annoying, because the only way to update it, up until this point, is to really go into every single company's financials and pull out the data that you want, right? And for every analysis, it tends to be a point in time analysis because you're not going back and updating a lot of the old industry models. What we're doing at Daloopa is we're empowering you to be able to update your industry models. So if you look in front of me, this is a 2021 Q3 semiconductor comp sheet. What you might want to do is you might want to say, look, I want to see how the industry is tracking now. So all you have to do is you just use update column and you say, semis have reported Q4 numbers. I want Q4 numbers. You hit update. What we'll do is we will update your entire sheet regardless of the ticker. That didn't work. Let's try it again. AL 2021 Q4. Hang on. Did I open? Oh, let me just check here. Looks like I need to refresh my updater. Let me try with Q3 data. It's awkward.
Thomas, if you don't mind, actually, there's a number of questions that were raised. Would you have time for maybe one or two while it updates?
Yeah, so it looks like it just updated.
Okay, perfect.
Perhaps Q4 data is not out yet. I might be wrong. But what I just did was, pretend Q4 data is out. And what we have just done is we've added in a new column, right, with all of that data. And so as a result, you will be able to track across ADI, M4, Amphenol, Micron, all the different KPI data that you have initially created. And the idea here is quite simple, right? Every single person might want to track something different per industry. Perhaps I care about inventory levels, but you perhaps don't care about inventory levels. Maybe you care about EBITDA margins, right? And that might be something you want to place together in a comp sheet. And with the power of our updater, you can update these massive comp sheets in a matter of seconds. The only thing that is required is for you to use data with a hyperlink. That's it, right? So how we built this comp sheet, we open up the Corvo model. We literally just Control-C, Control-V into this sheet, and then this sheet always stays updated. So the idea here being, it doesn't really matter how you orient data, whether you move the data around, whether you add rows, delete rows. You can do whatever you want with the data. What the updater does is it looks for a cell with a hyperlink and it populates the new time series data point that you are telling it to populate. Yes, Anas, we can move on to some questions.
Yeah, sorry, I think it was just a number of questions that were sent to me directly, so I just wanted to take that opportunity. But thank you for walking us through it. The first question is, what are some common reasons a data point is not updated?
Yeah, so I would say, loosely speaking, there are three reasons a data point is not updated. The first reason is you just simply don't have a hyperlink in one of the previous cells. So for instance, in this case, 3.6 is just not a number disclosed by the company, and therefore it won't be updated. The second reason is you perhaps forgot to retrofit. So in this case, the first thing we did was we retrofitted a column by including data points. If you did not retrofit, without the hyperlinks, the updater simply won't work. So you have to use the retrofitter before you use the updater. The last one is either a mistake on your side or our side in terms of the data. For instance, if you have data that you typed with wrongly from basically how the company discloses, and the most common instance of where we see that is with summed up columns. So a lot of times the company will disclose, let's say, segments with revenue of 111, but the sum total is actually 4. And the sum total is 4 because of rounding, because the company is disclosing 1.3, 1.3, 1.3, and the sum total of 3.9 rounds to 4. But when they truncate off the decimal points, the report is 1114. What we collect at Daloopa is the number 4, not the number 3. And so if you try to update it, if you try to retrofit that number 4 wouldn't be retrofitted because the number in your model is 3. And as a result, when you try to run the updater, that number doesn't get updated because the way our system perceives it is you had a wrong number in your model. Company disclosed 4 and you had 3, so it didn't update. And of course, there's always the chance that our system bugs out. We just simply don't have the data. There's one last piece is the company simply hasn't reported yet. Sometimes that's just a mistake. It's just a mistake. We think the company has reported. We don't track the company closely. You try to update, it doesn't update, and then you go back and you realize, oh, hang on, they're reporting next week. Believe it or not, that happens to me personally a lot of the times too.
Awesome. Thank you. And the second question is, I only use non-GAAP numbers in my model, and they are calculated data fields. How do I update them?
Yeah, it's a good point. So the way Daloopa captures non-GAAP data is we capture the data in the terms of a bridge, right? So let me show you what our CRM data set looks like. So if you come into the CRM data set, you will notice that there is this section called GAAP to non-GAAP, and this is pretty much true for all of our models. And in GAAP to non-GAAP, we will have the entire bridge, right? Starting with the GAAP items, all the different items that add up to it, and eventually ending up with the non-GAAP item. If your non-GAAP number matches up with company disclosed non-GAAP numbers, which it should, then it will update it with the non-GAAP number, right? Because you have retrofitted your net income as 1327 and not 2625 in this instance. So in this instance, if you had retrofitted it, we will have put in this number. And because we put in this number, we will be updating with 1637. Said differently, if your model has non-GAAP, we will update with non-GAAP. If your model has GAAP, we will update with GAAP.
Terrific. The third question, and I think there's 2 more additional questions that just came in, but the third question is probably on the mind of everyone is there a way to have my data updated faster?
Yes. So that's something that we're working on very fervently. But if you do have a priority in your mind, this model is incredibly important to me. Reach out to Anas if he doesn't reach out to you. So before every quarter, we send everyone an email asking you for your priority models. And if something is absolutely important to you, just make sure you let Anas know, and we'll schedule it to the very top of our priority. So when the company releases earnings, we'll start working on it right away, and we'll dedicate more assets to the development of that model. And that's the easiest solution. Just make sure you reply to Anas's email and just let him know the list of tickers that you care about, the absolute most.
Terrific. I think we have a question raised from Michael.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Michael.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Just on that last part, can you just explain why it takes longer for some models than others, like it being a higher priority? Like, is this not all automated in the background? And then, I think you guys have said this before, but like, how quick do you think you could get models updated, in let's say a year's time as you progress?
Yeah. So in the background, basically what happens is we perform an AI-driven extraction process, right? And in that extraction process, the reason we do that is because essentially it removes any instance of typo. You will never have typing error, and we can build in these hyperlinks, and we can collect, honestly, just way more data than any human can in the period of time. The challenge of just running an AI-driven approach is that you don't get generally the 100% accuracy rates that you expect in your model. So we have a manual checking process, what we call validation, where based on the confidence criteria, we have human analysts coming in to basically validate if, not just if the number is correct, but if we have pulled the number from the right location, if the number matches to the right time series, and if what we call the metadata tags around it are correct or not. So like if it's a million, collect in the millions, if it's billions, collect in the billions. And as earnings happen, obviously, as you can imagine, the volume gets very high. And so that starts to take a little bit longer. The second thing that sort of changes the amount of time a model updates is what we call complexity. So a model is generally complex when it comes down to two things. The first thing is just the sheer size of the model. So some companies like CRM, the models are not super large, right? But some companies, some utility companies, energy companies, industrial companies, they tend to have models that are in the thousands, if not the tens of thousands of disclosure rows. So that takes a little bit longer. The last dimension is when it comes to data points that tend to be more nuanced to collect. So data points in pie charts and tables. So one example is, if I remember correctly, in Salesforce, you have this market share data, right? So if you click into the market share data, the source is actually a chart. Yep, I remember that correctly, right? So the source is actually a chart. And so even though it's automatically collected, you can actually see where the OCR recognized the chart itself. The problem is, it's like if you look down here, right, when all the logos are mapped up and it gets a little bit confusing, it's honestly even hard for a human to tell like which is above the other. The reason we can tell is because of red versus blue, right? So that's something that a human has to come in and make sure that you get it right. Obviously, Salesforce is a lot higher, so it becomes a bit easier. But imagine if Salesforce was somewhere below here, then it becomes a little bit more challenging. So this is something that almost always we have humans checking it to make sure that it's correct. Those are the key things. To your second part of the question, what do we envision?
Can I just, before you get to that part, can I just ask, just from my perspective, if I need to do a model, like I'm doing it, it comes out 4 p.m. Eastern time, I start plugging it in, it probably takes me 45 minutes to get it done before the call.
Yeah.
Like, I get that you're capturing all this data, but what if a lot of data is pretty standard, right? The income statement, the balance sheet, oftentimes the non-GAAP filings, where I don't think you need as much human validation. And there's some other like key KPIs that are pretty consistent that are in tables. I'm just curious, like, could you prioritize that quicker and then do like a second update where you get, the other 1,000 data points that you collect? That way, because like I get, Daloopa is helpful if I have like 4 earnings and I can't get to all of them, but like if I have 1 or 2, I can probably finish them before Daloopa is updated. So I don't know. I'm just brainstorming, ways to make it a little bit easier for us to make it more useful for some people who want the models done before the earnings call.
Yeah. So thanks for the feedback. So yes, that is actually something that we're working on right now. The end of year, I wouldn't say I can guarantee this because it's an engineering task, but the end of the year target is to deliver models before the earnings call, right? That's the whole idea. And the idea is, as a former analyst myself, having the numbers before the earnings call and having the numbers after the earnings call makes a whole world of difference in terms of how I approach the earnings call. And so there's a couple of things that we're working on. You're absolutely right. The first thing we're working on is priority, right? By prioritizing, like perhaps, a lot of the cash flow statement, a lot of the other more nuanced disclosures we don't need to capture. And the other thing we're working on is a system where instead of having humans check, 1,000 data points, have humans check just 200 data points, and then start releasing in batches. So in fact, one of the first things that we've done is we've actually already prioritized by documents. So the way we do it is you will notice that your model updates a couple of different times. So if you were here, 6 months ago, where the product is nowhere close to where it is today, we were updating everything at one go, right? Which was obviously super, super slow because 10Qs come a lot later than 8Ks. So the first prioritization we did was we said, let's split it up, 8Ks, investor presentation, and 10Qs. They're separate, so update them separately. And then the second thing we're going to try to do is we're going to try to even break down the 8K into smaller pieces, right? So we can just have micro update releases as it happens. But yeah, thanks, Michael, for that. I appreciate it.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. That's actually terrific feedback. So I'll move on. I know if we're for the sake of time, we have two more questions that just actually came in, Thomas. The one is, do you update for new disclosures? I already know the answer to that one, but I'll let you go ahead and answer it.
Yeah, so yes and no. So the way updating works is because updating only updates for a row with previous hyperlinks, if there is new disclosure, we will not automatically insert it into your Excel. The reason we don't do that is because if we were to do that, it could potentially ref out your Excel model, because I just don't know what formulas you have in there, what dependencies you have in there, and I will never want to ref out your Excel model in the middle of earnings, right? That's just not a good practice. We are working on a solution right now to create a new tab to show you what has been newly created. And hopefully that gets pushed out soon. But in the meantime, how this problem is solved is by a simple highlight. So if you come into Salesforce, right, let's take a look at Salesforce. So you will see these yellow rows. So what a yellow row basically means is in the latest quarter, in the latest version of the Excel update, this is just a new disclosure. It's just has not been disclosed before. And obviously you can click in to audit it. And what we're telling our customers is after your model has been updated for earnings, we will send you an email telling you if there is new data, and just open up the model and just take a look and make sure that there are no yellow rows. And if there are yellow rows, make the decision, right? Do I want to include this in my model or not? Maybe this R&D headcount for Salesforce really just doesn't matter. It's just simply not even close to a driver of the business. And maybe you can avoid that. But if perhaps, let's say this number, headcount for marketing and sales matters, then you want to incorporate that into your model. So yeah, simply yellow highlights.
Terrific. And the last question is actually a fairly interesting question that came in. So what happens when a new company is formed after merging of two companies? How is the data point updated? And this is actually a two-part question. The second part of it is, which ticker does the update happen in?
Yeah, good question. So we follow the rule of which ticker is buying the other ticker, right? What is the legacy of the ticker? So one example is when Disney bought Fox, or when Salesforce bought Slack. The original ticker in Disney's case is Disney, in Salesforce case is Salesforce. So while Slack will be deprecated, right? While Fox will be deprecated, you can still go down with the old model. It won't be updated after the acquisition closes. What will happen is a lot of times you will see the company adding in new data points, right? So what you will see in that one quarter is you will see a lot of these yellow highlights, right? You will see a lot of new data points basically being added. You'll see a lot of previous data points that will end, right? So previous data points that simply won't be updated again. So you start seeing a bunch of blanks. And so in that process, what you will have to do is you would have to open up our new Salesforce model, right? After Salesforce closes on Slack, and copy and paste a lot of the new disclosures into your existing models. Right. What we don't do, just like in the earnings update, is we won't be adding in automatically all the new Slack data for you for two simple reasons. The first is it probably will ref out your Excel, and the second is I just don't know which of the data points that were newly created is of interest to you, right? So just open up the new model and we will update it, so long as you're using the ticker that is the acquirer, right, the buyer.
That's terrific. That has been, honestly, I think I can speak for everyone. Like I said, this has been a great walkthrough, Thomas. I know we're at time, but I just wanted to give the opportunity, if someone has one last question, please, please feel free. If not,
I have
oh,
sorry. Yeah, sorry. Two, I guess, more suggestions. So sorry, I'm taking up so much time. When you send like updated items that are new, instead of like, and just from my perspective, so maybe everyone else has a different view, instead of seeing like the number row in an email, it might make more sense to actually just tag what that item is. So I don't have to open up the Excel because, like, I don't know, you added like some new item in PP&E that I don't probably care to put in my model. But if there's like a new revenue driver, I might want to put that in. So if I see it pop up right on the email update, that's more helpful to me. And then that industry model that you showed us, the semis one, like I think that's very powerful information. I would like, if you could send this to me, this would be great. I could like leverage this, and I would just make a suggestion as, you know, you create these type of Excel industry models to just send them to clients. So, you know, I don't have to go out and start building this out on my own, because this could take a bunch of time. And if you already have it done, it saves me. And if you built it out for other industries, you know, right now, a lot of stuff is going on with Facebook. If you did it with DAUs or MAUs for companies, that would be helpful. I cover payments. If you did something on volume, like, you know, these are just, I'm just brainstorming, but value add type of things that could be helpful for customers.
Yeah, so Michael, to your point, in our next product release very soon, we're actually changing the email thing from rows to the row labels itself. With respect to the industry model, I hear you. So I'll definitely send you this right after this call, and that's a good idea. We'll take it into consideration. I mean, by that I mean we'll execute on it for sure, and I'll keep you updated on the progress. I do believe that you can expect to see a couple more of those industry models. I believe we have a payments one actually, so I'll send that to you too.
Yeah,
great, thank you.
Yes, we do. So we'll be sharing that with you, Michael. Anyone on the call, if you would like access to this industry model, I mean, please let me know. Let myself or your customer success manager know. More than happy to share with you. And so I know, Thomas, I know we're at time. Any last questions, maybe Michael or Jack or anyone on the call? All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for us. Again, thank you, Thomas, and thank you all for joining. As a last reminder, a recording of this and all the previous webinars will be available on our YouTube and LinkedIn pages. So please make sure to check those out, and please don't hesitate to reach out to either myself or your customer success manager if you wish to receive a direct link to the recording.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.